think this is the most commonly asked author question, and it is for a good reason. It's a great question. Where do the ideas come from? It's also probably the least satisfying question to answer because the answer is everywhere. The ideas come from everywhere. There isn't one specific place or one answer to the question. And I think a lot of authors, certainly me, don't even figure out where the ideas for our stories came from until we're done writing and we go back and we have to answer a question like this for a school visit or for an interview or something like that. And then we start to realize, oh, that's where that came from. That's where that character developed from, or that's where that plot point came from. So some of the answers that I have given are from memories, from my own life experiences, from friends that I've had or people who have been in my life, from news articles, from other books or TV shows or movies that I've watched, or from a song, or from a photograph, or from a walk outside, from my kids. There are so many different sources of inspiration. And when you're writing a book, it feels like all of those different pieces get pulled together and you create something brand new from them. And usually you don't know what all those pieces are until afterward and you start examining and pulling them out. So I thought that quintessence mostly came from how I love to watch meteor showers on the beach. And from that, I had the image of the falling star. But there's so much more in that story that came from so many different places in my life. I moved across the country when I was young. I had anxiety when I was young. There's Shireen from the book reminds me a lot of one of my best friends from college. I learned a lot about alchemy at one point in my life because I thought it was so interesting. I love junk shops, and there's a junk shop in the story. I had a telescope when I was a kid. All these little pieces, and they all come together and form something brand new that you could never have expected and that you could never have put together if you had tried to do it. It's just all there waiting for you. So my writing process is very messy and scattered because I am kind of messy and scattered. So when I sit down to write, I don't always write in order. I don't always finish up a scene before I move on to a next one. Sometimes I write a little bit of the end. Sometimes I write several scenes worth of dialogue. Sometimes I know that an exciting part of the story is coming up, so I skip ahead and I write that. So I'm very sort of all over the place when I write. But there comes a point in the writing where I have to be disciplined. I have to pull myself together, sit down, and really focus as hard as possible and work on the story from beginning to end to make sure that everything is clear and that the content flows. And then after I do that, I do it about 100 more times. I read my stories over and over and over. I read them out loud a lot, which takes a really long time. And I really like to delve into each specific word to make sure that it flows and that it all coheres together. So I am both very scattered and super perfectionist with my writing, and somehow that works for me. But I know other people who are very disciplined from the start, and I know other people who are very all over the place from the start. So there's a million different ways to write a story. I also have sort of a mindset of working as hard as I can with the time that I have. So I don't set a lot of goals. I don't set word count goals or page goals. I just try to do as much as I can in the time that I have. And in between writing sessions or time that I have to actually sit and write, I make sure that I'm thinking about the story, that I'm staying in the mindset of the story. When I go to sit down, a lot of times I'll read a little bit of what I've written before so I get back into the flow of the words. And then I just let my imagination take me, let the story take me and lead me where it's going to. So for the past couple years, since The Miraculous, shortly before it came out, mostly what I've been doing is writing. I have 3 books coming out in 3 years, and that really is quite a lot of work, especially because I have 2 young children. So that's been my focus, is my kids and my writing for the last few years. But prior to that, I was a therapist, and I also taught psychology as an adjunct teacher at a college. As a therapist, I worked in a lot of different sort of facets of that field. I worked with kids in the foster care system. I worked at a community mental health center. I worked at a drug and alcohol rehab center. And I also had a private practice. And in my private practice, I got to see mostly young people who were struggling with anxiety, with depression, with eating disorders, with all kinds of different mental health and just life stuff. And I have been so amazed and surprised to find how much writing and therapy really go hand in hand. I love talking about feelings and emotions, and I love writing about that in my books too. And being a therapist has allowed me to sort of get into the head and walk alongside of so many people and to hear their stories. And so I have sort of a rich background to pull from of experiences that have been really valuable to me as an author. The best part, there are so many good parts of being an author. It's really hard to choose. I love doing school visits because I just love being with people who have read the book or who want to read the book. I love getting people excited about reading and about writing. I love, being in person with people and, signing their books and shaking their hands and giving them hugs and being with them. But I also really love being by myself. I love sitting in a room with just my ideas and seeing where those ideas will take me. I love living inside of the story, and my favorite part of the writing process is at the very beginning, where I have just a spark of an idea, just a tiny little piece, and I get to see where that is going to lead me. When everything is possibility, nothing is nailed down, nothing is for sure, all the paths are available to me, and I get to see which one I'm going to walk down with this tale. That's my favorite, even more than finishing a book, even more than seeing a book, in its finished form in my hands. Coming up with the ideas and sort of beginning to form the world is my favorite part of the writing process. So when I first published The Miraculous, I knew that I had a second book that I was contracted to write. And so I knew, okay, I'm going to be able to write at least 2 books. But I never really thought about how many books I would get to eventually write and publish. So I have a 3rd book that comes out in May, The Adventure Is Now. And then I have my first picture book. It's a Christmas picture book. It comes out in 2022. And then after that, nothing is set in stone. But I do have stories that I'm working on, stories that my agent has seen and stories that she's excited about. So one of them is a story about surfing and lighthouses and immortality. I'm pretty excited about that one. That will probably be my next middle grade book. And I am just constantly, I'll be like just doing something, and then all of a sudden I'll have this moment, this thrill to think, I'm an author. I get to write books, something that I've always wanted to do for my whole life. I'm actually doing it. And that's a really, really special feeling. And I'm at a place in my writing career where I don't really worry when I send a middle grade book to my agent if she's going to say it's good or not. I know that it's not bad. And I know that we can make it better if it's not perfect. And so that's a really cool place to be in too, where I'm not as self-conscious about the things that I write, but I'm ready to get better and I'm ready to write more.